Well, I know some of you are graphic designers out there who are making web pages, and eventually you want to make some kind of a page where you can display your work as a portfolio. I thought this would be a good time to make a portfolio web page, and using Flex Display and a little media query action, then we can put together not only a page that displays your art in your projects, but it also makes it quite responsive. Let's go ahead and begin. We'll start by creating a folder in our Dreamweaver projects folder, and we'll just call this portfolio. Now, in the portfolio folder, I added another folder. You should do the same, call it images. And in here, I just have some examples of some work that I've done recently, and they're saved accordingly. You don't have to have this many images of yours in there. I'm not going to use them all for this project. If I were going to upload this to a site, I would only have just the images that I am using on my site in that folder. I wouldn't upload anything that isn't essential or that isn't being used in the web page itself. Once we have that done, then we can go to Dreamweaver, the usual kind of business, and in here we will go to Site and New Site. Select the little folder down there. And if we find our Dreamweaver projects folder and select our portfolio folder, then select folder, then we can change the site name to portfolio example. Alright, once we have that done, then we can create new, and we want it to be new document, HTML, none. And for this title, we can type in my portfolio. Once we have that finished, we can go to File, Save As, and we can save it as a web page right away. Make sure you're in the right folder, and we will call this index.html and save. Alright, up here we do have the title. Just in case you end up using this as a basis for a portfolio webpage you're going to put online later, we can use our tag here for meta name equals description, and we can use content equals this is the graphic design portfolio of Brandon Petersen. You know, whatever you want to put in there, so if somebody were to search this online when it's posted, this would be the description that shows up underneath the title in the search engine on whatever browser that they're using. So it makes it look a little bit nicer and just gives them a bit of information to entice them to want to click on that link so that they can visit your web page. Once we have that done, then we'll go ahead and we'll go down to the body section of this. And this isn't going to be a very complicated web page because I want it to be something that you can incorporate into whatever structure that you have created on your site to make it as flexible as possible. So in here for the body, we can go up here to insert, and the first thing I might use is just a simple header, and we'll click OK, and then we'll place a heading in there as a H1, and in the H1 I will type in portfolio. Once we have the header done, then we can press enter a few times, and the next object that I'm going to place in there is going to be a div. Now on the div, I am going to use a class for this. So in this area provided, I'm going to type in page box. That's been a common one we've been using in class for a while. It gives us our content in there. and I'll press enter a few times to give myself some room underneath it. Right underneath the page box class, then we're going to add an article. So over here on the side we can go to insert an article, and we will give this article an ID, and this ID we will call intro. And that should work for the article. Also in that article we'll put in a few things in there. One of them being, just to do our organization here, we will put in an H2 that we can use, and for the H2 we might type in something like my creations, and then underneath that we'll go to the side and we will find the element for the paragraph, and in that paragraph we could type in, here is an example of a portfolio that can be used to display a variety of images. Alright, and that works good for this first portion of the article. Once we have that done, then I'm going to press enter a few times, and now we're going to type in something that it's going to get a little bit repetitive in here, and I'm going to leave a space in here just to make it easier for me to read, and I'm actually going to type these out just to make it a little bit easier. So in here I could type in div class equals quotation marks row, and then underneath that I'll type in div class equals quotation marks column. There we go. And for the column, I can enter this down a few because we're going to put a few examples in here of this column. So to begin with, this is going to be img space src for an image, and then we'll type in equals, and then I'm going to type in images because that's the name of the folder that we used, and then slash, and then you want to use whatever the name of your image is for that project. For right now, just as a placeholder, I'm going to type in image name dot jpg. Alright, and then after that, if you want to, you can use your alt equals, and then you could type in description of image here, and that way if somebody's going through your stuff and they're unable to see the images, screen reader could at least say what the picture is of there, or if it doesn't show up, there's at least a little description in there, just a short little statement of what it is. Alright, now in here for this example, I'm going to copy this image here, and then I'll paste it so that I have 4 examples in this first one here. You can make it as long as you want for this. This is just kind of how I'm doing that. Alright, now what we'll do next is we'll take this div class equals column, and we are actually going to have 4 columns for this page. You'll be able to customize it however you would like. So I'll enter here, and then I'm going to paste this column here, and then I'll paste the third one there, and then I'll paste the 4th one right here. Alright, after we have that done, then we will need to go underneath that final column right there, and then we'll need to close the div for the class of row. That's important to be aware of. And then underneath that, we'll have the closing of the article, and then we have the closing for the page box. And then before we get to the body, then we'll use in our footer. And in the footer, we can put in a paragraph in there, and then we'll just say page created by your name, and then and copy semicolon. And if you remember in the tutorial before, or one of our previous ones, you can go in and use that script for this, but just for right now, to save time, this is just what I'm going to do, because mostly we're just focused here on this portfolio right here. Alright, so I'll save that, and we see up here what happens if our images don't show up, those descriptions show up in those appropriate places. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go through and replace the names of these to images that I have, and then I'll let you kind of do the same thing. So next time you see my screen on here, I'm going to have those updated. Alright, so I have those done. A few images of different file types just to show you it can be whatever kind you want. I don't think I have a PNG file in there, but it would work the exact same way as the JPEG or the GIF file or the SVG file. So now what we want to do is, if you check this out in the browser, these are all huge, they take up too much room, and there's no real rhyme or reason to how they fit in there, just whatever works best. So we need to add a style to this. Just like we've done a million times before, go over to CSS Designer. We will add a source, create a new CSS file. Click to make sure you're in your portfolio folder. We don't want to be inside the images folder, just right inside the portfolio. And we'll type in styles.css and save. Make sure it says link, and then we'll click OK. And we see that it added that link right here onto our head section of our HTML document. Go File and Save All, and then we can go over here to the styles, and again on this you can kind of decide how you want to do this. If you want to go over here and add the selectors and then the properties like we have, or if you want to type it in, whichever way works best for you is fine. Alright, so in here I'll start off with just our kind of universal styling idea up here, and I'm going to go box hyphen sizing border hyphen box semicolon. Alright, once I have that done, then I'm going to style the page box. So dot page box, and I had to use the dot there because that's a class for the div. Otherwise I could have done div, but I have multiple divs, so they all would have been behaving that way, so I had to give it a class and call it on here as dot page box. And we'll go width of 70%, and we'll go margin of auto. Alright, after that, then we can style the dot row, which is our other div that we had inside of the div. And this one we will go display flex, and we'll use flex hyphen wrap, and then we'll use padding of 0 space 4px. Alright, and then the next part we want to do is going to be for the actual columns. So we called those dot column. That's our div inside of a div inside of a div. And then we'll use flex is going to be 25%. and we'll use max hyphen width of 25%, and this is so we have 4 columns of those. Then we can put in padding, and I'm going to use 0 space 4px. So no padding above and below, but 4px to the sides. I'm going to press enter a few times here, and now we will go to the images in the column. So dot column space img, and I'll use margin hyphen top is going to be 0. Actually, no, let's put some margin there. We'll go 8px, and then we'll go vertical hyphen align is going to be middle, and then for the width it's going to be 100%. Alright, the footer, we can do this pretty easily. This is just going to be text align center. Alright, so on here I'll use my @ sign and I'll type in media space screen space, and then I'll use my parentheses here, and I'm going to type in max hyphen width is going to be 768px, and these are some adjustments that can be made to the screen sizes on how you want yours to look on different size images. This is just what I'm using for the example. And then I'll go screen /0, and then I'll put in my fancy brackets here. Okay, after that, but in those brackets I'm going to type in dot column, and I'll type in flex 50% and max hyphen width of 50%, and then I have the first one closed here and I have the second one closed there. That looks good. Then down here underneath that I'm going to go @ media and then parentheses max hyphen width 600px, and that's in parentheses there, and then our fancy brackets, and in this one I'll type in column, and for the column we'll go flex 100% and max width 100%. Alright, we'll save all of that. We'll go to our browser here and take a look. And we can see as we resize this, it's a very large size here. Once it gets smaller, it does kind of what it's supposed to do with our 2 columns. Once we get too small, it's not really behaving the way we want it to. So let's go back and take a look at our code here real fast. One of these issues here is we need a dot before the column because that is a class. And if I scroll through here, I can see right here we got a little typo. Column. We just need dot column. Alright, so we'll click Control S and save that. Now let's take a look and see what happens. And this is looking a little bit more about what it should be looking like. So on our full screen we have 4 columns, and then you can see how these kind of stack through that way. So as you build this together, you might end up in your source code, you might have some columns have longer lists than others. depending on the height of the pictures that are in that column. Just to kind of show you what this would look like using this exact same thing in another web page, I can go to my site, and if I go over here to portfolio, this is the same thing I did. This right here is kind of like a page box, and then you can see how they don't all have the same amount of images in them, and I just tried to space them out to where they could be pretty close to the same height. Then once I take that screen and I shrink it down to tablet size, then it gets larger so it's easy to see again, and we have it in each of these two columns. And then if we get closer to mobile device size, then everything's in their single file. So that's just kind of one example. Yours doesn't have to look exactly like that, and and yours kind of depends on what you're trying to create and what work you're trying to show with your portfolio, obviously. But there it is. You have it, a simple portfolio with a little flex display action and some media queries, and then even a little troubleshooting there, finding my typos. So let me know what you think in the comments. Give me some other ideas for more tutorials or more things you want to learn how to do with HTML and CSS. And have a great day.